Hello, everyone. It's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. So on May 28th, 2024, Aptera had an interview with CNN, and I thought this was one of the better interviews that were done, both on the interviewer and the interviewee side. If you want a uncommented video, just a straight feed from CNN, then I uploaded that yesterday night. So you can just look at that. This is something that I'll just have commentary and then if you prefer that version, this is that version. So this is First Move with Julia Chatterley. She interviewed Chris Anthony and Aptera several months ago, and she seems to be quite a fan, and she did a great job. So let's take a look.
Welcome back to First Move. It's a fast and furious first move as we chase the progress of the solar electric startup Aptera. And I can tell you they're accelerating with this blink and you'll miss it cameo in the new Netflix movie Atlas, starring Jennifer Lopez. I should point out that this three-wheeled vehicle does not fly in reality. But back down here on the ground, Aptera has been wowing investors, speeding around a racetrack in Abu Dhabi as part of the company's expansion. And it's entering a new financial phase too, with funding from US Capital Global to drive production, with the first deliveries now slated for next year. Aptera's rechargeable battery will last up to 1,000 miles, and the company says it can do an extra 40 miles a day from the solar panels on the body. Chris Anthony is the company's co-founder and co-CEO, and he's joining us now from Southern California. Chris, welcome back to the show. Now, we have to remind, you're welcome, remind our viewers, because I remember when you were last on and we were talking about this, you called this brutal execution on first principles engineering. Explain to us what that means.
We went back to the root science to design the most efficient vehicle platform ever.
Okay, so this is Chris Anthony giving his usual spiel about how this was designed to be the most efficient vehicle and how they got to that. He does a good job. That's a plug that he's given many times before. But I thought CNN did a very good job because they introduced Chris Anthony correctly as co-founder and co-CEO. Many of these news outlets, they forget about Steve Fambro and just say founder and CEO. But CNN gets it correct, and I applaud them for that.
So we use a 20th of the energy of a combustion vehicle and a quarter of the energy of today's electric vehicles. And we put it all in a very sexy package like what's behind me, and put some solar panels on top, and you get some very useful range with about 40 miles a day of free power directly from the nuclear generator in the sky.
But it also is an EV car, so people understand. So if you live in a less sunny environment, then you can charge this. And on what you're hoping to be some of the most expensive options on this car, the range is enormous.
Yeah, 1,000-mile range with the longest range battery pack. At its heart, it is an electric vehicle, but it has a solar panel package on top that basically trickle charges your batteries as you go.
Okay, so that's I think the perfect way of answering that. Chris Anthony basically says, yes, there is a 1,000-mile version. That's the most expensive version. Many of the previous answers and questions made it seem like all Aptera get 1,000 miles of range, which isn't correct, obviously. And then people get confused about the solar vehicle. They think their thing only runs when there's sunlight, like solar calculators. Remember the solar calculators? When it got dark, the calculator stopped working, and people say, oh, what about at night? And what if it's not sunny? Then the car won't move. And so he explains it's just a regular EV. It just uses solar for trickle charging. And I think trickle charging gives the right kind of impression about what kind of range you are expecting to get out of a solar EV. I think trickle charging maybe undersells it a bit.
So 40 miles a day of free driving in Southern California, that equals about 11,000 miles a year of free power. You don't have to pay anybody for it. You don't have to stop at a gas pump. You don't have to plug in. It just comes directly from the sun. But if you want to go on a long trip to see grandma, you can stop at a Tesla supercharger station and supercharge and be on your way.
Okay, well, that part is probably a little bit of an overstatement because supercharging, we have not gotten any official word that Tesla is allowing Aptera to have supercharging. Obviously, Aptera doesn't have a production vehicle, so they're not even in talks with Tesla about that. Now, Tesla has opened up their supercharging network to other manufacturers, so it seems likely and Aptera could use the slowest, oldest supercharger stations that are the 50 kilowatt and fill up very quickly on those. So I think Tesla wouldn't have any problems with opening it up to Aptera. I think it would be good PR for them. Now, the supercharger network, remember the entire supercharger team was fired by Elon Musk a couple of weeks ago. So, obviously the supercharger network is going to continue to go forward. It's unclear if it's going to be as good as it was in the past. Maybe it'll be better. Who knows? But that team is very understaffed at the moment. But anyways, I think it's going to be a year before we hear anything about actual agreement with Tesla about their supercharger network. Because just because Aptera has a NACS plug doesn't mean that you can just plug into a supercharger network. The supercharger network has to communicate with the vehicle and say that this is an authorized vehicle to allow it to charge.
And get several hundred miles of range in just minutes at those supercharging stations.
And part of this as well is the weight. I remember that as well. It is incredibly light relative to other EV vehicles. I think it was around 60 or 65% lighter than the average EV vehicle. Is that correct? Because that allows you to get some serious speed as well.
Yeah, our base vehicle weighs about 2,000 pounds, but goes 0 to 60 miles an hour in about 4 seconds. So it's super nimble, super quick, great around the racetrack.
So let's talk about cost.
The base vehicle is about $26,000. If you add all the features and the longest range battery pack, it brings you up to about $44,000.
And then the base cost was around $26K, I think, wasn't it, in dollars?
$26,000, and the maximum range is about 1,000 miles and bumps it up to about $44,000. But when you take into account the energy savings and not having to stop at the gas pump, the average family in America is spending about $5,000 a year on gasoline now. So if you could put a big dent in that budget, you'd be saving money and doing good for the environment.
Okay, so $5,000 a year is probably a bit of an overstatement, but it does save you a lot of money, obviously.
And having an amazingly capable vehicle to drive around your town.
I also noticed that the passenger in that vehicle was a very smiley dog, which I thought was cleverly done. And it's a two-seater, we should point out as well. I remember that as well. What made you really interesting to me last time, beyond the technology, though, was how you were financing. We know this is a cash burn business. You crowdfunded, and I believe you raised around $100 million from 17,000 people. And now you've got an alternative funding source. Just talk to me about that decision moving on, and what that means for early investors and then obviously in this funding round, current investors.
Yeah, vehicle design and manufacturing is a capital intensive effort. We've been humbled by having 17,000 investors contribute over $100 million to the effort so far. We've had one of the most successful crowdfunding efforts in history. But now that we're tooling up and getting ready for production, we need bigger equipment and it costs a lot more money. So we had to find some more institutional partners, and U.S. capital is engaged to do just that, get us to production here in the next 9 months.
So how many cars do you think you're going to be able to produce and have on the market? Sort of 2025 is what you're targeting. Can you give us a sense?
Yeah, this production facility here in Southern California is about 80,000 square feet, and we can produce about 20,000 vehicles a year out of this one facility. We hope to master the process here and then copy it and paste it in many other locations: Northern California, Texas, Virginia, Georgia, the Netherlands.
Okay, so this is very interesting. Chris Anthony is specifically listing some states, which makes me think that this is something they've talked about. He's not just randomly, spitting off some states. It looks like, I think he said Georgia, Northern California, Texas, Georgia, Virginia. Okay, I think I said that. And then Netherlands, and I think he says Germany.
Germany, Australia.
Australia.
And be producing around 150,000 vehicles a year by 2034.
Can we talk about what's happening in the UAE as well, in the Union or the Etihad edition? Because I saw that it features gold exterior colorway, and you're going to be producing these in 2026.
Yeah, so I was surprised he didn't list the UAE as one of the countries. He said Netherlands, Germany, Australia. I think UAE is definitely going to be one of those, as long as they get some investment from them.
Talk to me about how this deal came about and who are the potential buyers.
Well, there's no better region for solar mobility than a region with
Absolutely.
lots and lots of sun. And that's what the UAE does. They're very excited to get something going with Aptera and bring our advanced technologies to the region. And they have great manufacturing prowess in many areas in glass and aluminum. And they're really building an amazing manufacturing base there. So we're excited to do work there too.
I also remember you talking about going public, taking the company public, because we were talking about you keeping your money in there, even as you were getting more money from the crowdfunding sources that were at that time stacking up. So have you still left all of your money in, even with this additional sort of private sector funding that you've managed to achieve? And are you still thinking in terms of sort of ramping up production and then potentially taking the company private, or is that perhaps been postponed?
Yeah, we've always looked at taking the company public. We have 17,000 investors and just an amazing story that has great public appeal that makes for a great IPO process. So we've been getting the company ready. We're a regular filer with the SEC, working on Sarbanes-Oxley compliance and just getting ready for the process as we enter production to also be a publicly available company.
I can't believe I didn't ask you before now. Can I ask how much money they gave you?
Okay, so this is where Julie Chatterley makes the mistake and jumps to conclusion that many of us went to, which when Aptera announced their partnership with US Capital Group, we assumed that that meant US Capital Group was investing in Aptera and that they were providing the money. But as it turns out, that's not the case. US Capital Group is an investment bank who is going to try to gather the money for Aptera from their private pool of investors and through maybe some kind of debt financing that they're going to figure out using Aptera's IP as collateral, and probably a combination of both. But they have not guaranteed the money, and Chris Anthony kind of skirts around the issue and doesn't answer it directly because I think that reality isn't as exciting, basically. But that is the case, is that U.S. Capital is not funding Aptera directly. They are just the broker to gather the deals and make it work. Now, U.S. Capital Group obviously feels like they're going to succeed, or else they wouldn't take on this project.
The U.S. Capital deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on about a $60 million funding plan for production. It could be a little less, could be a little more. We're looking at other equipment financing and debt financing too. So there'll be a lot of pieces of the puzzle that actually get us to production and beyond. But U.S. Capital is amazingly capable, and they're a global firm, and we look to do some pretty great things with them.
Okay, so the point is, though, you can produce what you're planning now based on that money, and actually you're not going to be forced to perhaps go to the public markets for cash, at least in the interim. That's sort of what I was getting at there. Elon Musk.
Plan
Go on.
to cash flow neutrality. This plan gets us to cash flow neutrality and beyond. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Elon Musk famously said that he didn't think that solar-powered cars would ever really be a possibility. I think it was on Joe Rogan's podcast that he mentioned this. Have you spoken to or heard from Elon about what you're doing?
We think he's doing amazing stuff in the electric vehicle industry, and we're blessed by a lot of Tesla's technology trickling down. So we're grateful. But he's right. Cars of today cannot really be solar powered. It's just not useful. You have to have a vehicle that's designed for efficiency to really make solar power useful.
All right. So I think that is the crucial point, is that when Elon Musk said that it doesn't work, it's because if you put a solar panel on a regular car, they're going to get like 10 miles per day at most. And that's not very useful. But if you make the car super efficient, then it becomes useful range. And Aptera's main kind of superpower is its efficiency. It's not the solar. The solar, I think, it was a good marketing ploy. And this is what gets them the interviews and gets them the press. The solar is very exciting for a lot of people. But that's not possible without the efficiency. And but selling a super efficient car is just not as cool as saying we're selling a solar car. And it turns out they have some solar IP, which there's been some news on that. So we'll talk about that in some future video. But yeah, it's the efficiency which is the important part of the Aptera.
And we designed a vehicle that's lightweight and uses a quarter of the energy per mile as the average EV. So when we put solar on top, you can get really useful range. The average driver in North America can drive 31 miles a day. We can provide all that driving with just the solar panels on top of this vehicle, and really makes it for a compelling solution.
Have you heard from him? Has he said anything to you?
I've met him a couple times, and okay. We've run in the same kind of circles, but he's a much busier man now, so he's got a lot
Just checking.
things around.
Yeah, and your point is made as well that you need the combination of the EV and the solar, but for short distances and runarounds, then you could arguably use this vehicle, if successful, just on the solar itself, which is pretty groundbreaking. Chris, can't wait to see them being produced and up and running, and to do a test drive at some point, she says, please.
Welcome to San Diego.
Okay, so I thought this was a great interview. I think Chris Anthony did a great job of kind of he handled the pricing really well too. He gave him the whole range, 26 to 44, and he made sure to mention that the 1,000 mile range is the highest end vehicle, and kind of talked about the trickle charging, and kind of explained to them that it's an EV that has solar trickle charging, which makes it, I think, a little more clearer for some new people to the space. Hopefully this helped them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for watching.